people from low-income backgrounds less likely to be in manager roles? One research study says yes. A research study from 2022 looked at nationally representative data to look at the odds of people from different class backgrounds ending up in managerial roles. They found that people from lower class backgrounds were 32% less likely to be in management roles. In the same data set, they compared this across race and gender, and Black people compared to whites were 25% less likely to be in managerial roles, and women were 28% less likely to be in managerial roles compared to men. The researchers talk about how this shows the salience of class, since class was at 32%, bigger than either group. However, keep in mind, there are people who fit into at least two, if not and all three of those categories. Later in the article, they talk about how class matters more for African Americans than for white people from low-income backgrounds because it's a double whammy. They didn't find a significant result for women coupled with class backgrounds of the double whammy until it was in certain very elite positions. And the example they gave was for lawyers. While people from lower class backgrounds may have a harder time getting into leadership management positions in these fields, women have an especially hard time getting into these leadership in these fields once it's at a certain level. And this is consistent with what we see in leadership in general. We do see about 30% of women middle management leaders, but the Fortune 500s, very rare. And women of color, I think, is literally 1% of Fortune 500 leaders. Now, a limitation of this study is how they divided class based on the data they had was if your parents, at least one of them, had a bachelor's degree or not. So it wasn't necessarily about income. I don't think they had that available to them. And that would vary based on location of what is considered well off in your area. Now, what's interesting is the main mediator for who did well, who from a lower class background was able to get into a manager position. The biggest indicator was access to an education, bachelor's level. And this is a study published in 2022, so it's still fairly recent, even though we're going through a shift with education and work, right? And while education was the biggest, there were still other things that are cultural factors. What I call the unwritten rules. People from lower income backgrounds had less social capital to use to get jobs. They also had lower confidence in companies, indicating that maybe there's an issue there with discrimination. There is also a cultural difference of that people from lower income backgrounds are raised to be obedient and obey, while upper class people are raised more to be more independent and do the commanding. So the researchers hypothesize that part of the reason that people from lower class backgrounds may not move up is because they have been raised to respect authority and they will do so, while people from upper class backgrounds are raised to be the authority and they will wield that over the other employees. In another study they did, they found that social class was still a significant predictor of your ability to obtain leadership positions, even after controlling for income and occupational prestige. So if you're from a lower income background, learning these cultural skills, these unwritten rules is very important. And if you're an organizational leader, being aware that this is a barrier is vital, because other research that we've talked about on here shows the valuable cultural toolkits that people bring when they're able to transition classes. They're able to communicate with people across class divides. And some of those people are your clients and customers. And you'd be surprised sometimes who is a transitioner and hiding. It is not always immediately visible.